Welcome to today's table talk session on NACA. All right, welcome back for today's table talk session. We're going to be continuing our series with NACA. Today is going to be very much so a demonstration on what I did and what my husband and I discussed when we wanted to figure out how much of a mortgage did we want. We did not want to be what you would call house poor or basically just having a house or mortgage payment and we weren't able to still have a savings. We wanted to be able to have a mortgage, be able to have cushion, have a savings still going, and make sure that we could live, okay? And that's the place that you want to be in. So today is about how much of a mortgage can you really afford and making sure that you're living within your means. You know, a lot of times you'll go on these websites and you're like, oh, that's a beautiful home. And I'm talking about if it's $200,000, $300,000. But once you start adding in your living expenses, once you start putting in consideration the taxes and the necessities that it takes to take care of your home, plus regular bills, it'll help to get your mindset on really how much of a house can you afford. And that's what today's table talk session is all about. So let's get started. First, we're going to go to our NACA workbook because the workbook is your guide. It is very important for you to actually read the workbook. A lot of questions that you may have is just sometimes that you have to read. I know that it seems tedious, but when I was going through the workbook, if you had my workbook, you'd be like, oh, she was highlighting, because some of the questions that you have is already explained. Like, I'm not being excessive. I'm talking about getting your highlighter, highlighting things that are important. All right, your mortgage payment consists of the principal, okay? And we know that with any kind of loan, whether it be a personal loan, a car loan, a student loan, there's a principal amount. The principal amount is always that amount that you want to target to knock down the overall sum, okay? But then there's the interest. And we know that interest is what is tagged on so that whoever is giving you this money gets a percentage or a cut also, all right? There's something called a PITI. P stands for principal, I stands for interest, T stands for taxes, and the other I stands for insurance. It's called the PITI. Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And all of those combine together to make your mortgage payment. Okay, every month since we've had our home, we receive our mortgage statement, right? And there is a percentage that's taken out that will go straight to the principal. There's a percentage that's taken out in interest. There's a percentage that's taken out to pay our taxes. And then there's a percentage taken out which pays our insurance, okay? You have to have all of that as a mortgage, or to have your mortgage to be a homeowner. So let's just get that in our minds, in our head. Okay. In your workbook, again, if you are looking in our booklet, on page 16, there's a section called mortgage payment. And if you read that page, it will go into detail, the breakdown of what I just described. Today, I want to focus on the payment shock and limiting factors that will hinder you from getting that bomb house that you really love. It's that dream house that you really love. You think is dope. It will look great. But can you really afford it? That's what we have to figure out, is can you really afford that home? In the workbook, there are pages that you need to focus on, and I'm going to tell you the numbers. It's page 21, which goes over payment shock, and I'm covering this because we wrote down numbers. So on page 21, there is a section called payment shock. We need to have that page ready. And the other page that we're going to focus on, our pages are 22 and 23. Now on page 22 and 23 is talking about limiting factors and your debt to income ratio, which is important. Whenever you go to a bank, for instance, they will pull your credit, of course, but they also want to know what is your gross income, how much are you bringing in, and they need to know how much of your money goes out to figure out your actual affordability. Can you actually afford that which you're trying to get based on the loan amount? Okay. All right, now we're going to head over to a website or a couple of website or tools that we use in order to figure out how much home or how much house could we really afford. And I'm going to use the numbers that NACA gave or gives in the workbook, okay? These are going to be estimated numbers. These are going to be projected numbers of what a two household family might typically have, okay? So we have the NACA workbook that I'll be using and two other websites that you would use probably if you were looking for a home. And I'm going to show how I use these websites in order to demonstrate our affordability when he and I talked about what we really wanted to work with when before we had to come up with our actual payment shop, because you want to know how much house you're willing to work towards, because the number that you project is what you're going to commit to. I hope that makes sense. So once we figured out how much of the house that we wanted to pay for based on the mortgage amount that we believed that we could afford, making adjustments with the calculations, then we had to make the difference based on the payment shock section in the workbook. And I'll try to explain that more in this video. So how much can you afford will include you figuring out your gross amount, comparing that to your net amount, doing some calculations, and then plugging in these numbers into the section of your workbook that talks about payment shock. All right, so let's get started on that now. On this website, and it's called the income tax calculator because I wanted to work with realistic figures, and these are the tools. These are like tools that I use when we were trying to analyze realistic numbers for ourselves. Again, you're an advocate for yourself, and you want to make sure that you're understanding what you're working towards and what you're working with. So here you get to type in what your income is per year and then where you work. So I just went with 60,000. I think that's the even number. Like if you're joint, one person makes 30,000, the other person makes 30,000, combine at 60,000 as the gross. You press calculate, and then it will show you what the breakdown is. That your net pay is only going to be 77.1%, and they tax you a chunk of that percent. So here it says the real tax that you'll end up paying is about 28.7%. So if I have a calculator, which I'm going to go to, let's say that I have a calculator, right? And I'm going to move it so that you can see it in the screen. So let's say you had that 60,000, right? You took away your tax, 0.7. That's $17,220 that they would take from you. That left you at $42,780 of net. You would divide that number by 12, which is bringing in your monthly net income, okay? Then we're talking about how much can you afford. So I am going to go back to that workbook, and I'm talking about this part. You only want to have used about 31% of your gross income. In actuality, I'm going to do that by net because it's about the same thing. So take away 31%. Your mortgage should only be $1,105.15. That's including taxes. That's including if you don't go with NACA, PMI. That if you're not going with NACA, if you are going with NACA, then that's just $1,105. Okay. Now, that's just an example of what I mean. So your mortgage could be $1,105, but then you have to say, well, how much house is that I can afford? Like what kind of house is that I can look at? So then you would go to a website like Realtor, right? And let's just say, for example, that I want to find a house in Greensboro, North Carolina. And I put in that I want to live in a house, and I want this house to have 3 bedrooms, and I want it to have at least 2 baths, right? Well, it's going to start bringing me homes. And you, when you first start out, you're like, oh, that house looks nice. But then you're not wondering, I mean, then you have to wonder or figure out, can you really afford it? Like this house right here, look at how nice this house looks. Okay, let's click on this one. Y'all probably like 147,000. What? It'll even start flashing, pictures, right? Let's that was one you probably would click on. But let's see. This looks like a nice house as well. So you just like start looking through, right? Let's start at 153,000. Okay. When you click on this one, for example, you would come down, and this is what we did. We ran scenarios or ran numbers, and it actually worked out for us. For a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 5,227 square feet lot, it comes up as about 152,000. So we're going to estimate the mortgage. Okay, so we're going to put in some factors. Let's say that you don't have a down payment. Let's do a realistic interest rate. Let's say that with NACA, theirs would be like 3.8. That's cool. But let's say that you're not going with NACA, you went with another loan, and theirs is at 5%, right? 30 years, that would be $821. But this says the loan and interest only, taxes and insurance not included. So we're talking about that PMI. Mortgage insurance will be added when the down payment is less than 20%. So if you don't have a down payment, then we have to take $821. So $821 plus 20%. So the mortgage would be around $985 a month, roughly. That's just a guesstimate. With NACA, though, there is no PMI. So $821 roughly would be actually what you would pay. Okay. Now, although we're not saying there's a down payment, you will have earnest money with NACA that will be used towards your inspection and things like that. But this is basically what you would do to get numbers of how much you could actually afford. Now, $821 is a good amount to be at for a mortgage because, again, you want to be less than 31%. It said of gross, but I just did that based on net. So $821 is pretty good. You have a house and you're no longer throwing your money out with rent. You actually would buy to own. Because that's just an example. So $153,000 home, paying about $821. That's how you kind of build your idea of how much house that you can afford. I hope this is helpful. Now, we talked about using the realtor and estimated mortgage amount, but we haven't plugged in other numbers or other factors that could affect you and whether or not you really can afford the amount that we showed. So this is what I mean. I'm going to write down some typical things that you might pay per month. And this is what ties in a budget and why this is going to be important. Because remember on the budget sheet that I showed from the last video, at the bottom it said monthly commitment. That's going to be like your payment shock or the amount that you're trying to save every month. But you have to be able to have that money in your budget to prove that you're going to be able to do it. Okay? So your budget will come in handy, all right? Let's use some real bills or things that need to be paid for. And I'll show you using the Google Doc that I use for our monthly budget. Now, I am very, very particular about when we do our budget. I do a paper copy using a monthly planner. Like I have a yearly planner and we write down when things are scheduled, a list, and we do that every month when the bills are paid, how much the amount is, and so forth and so on. But I also had a Google Drive document where electronically we were typing things in, and every month I was doing make a copy. So now I'm going to share with you, can you really afford it after we have both the mortgage or projected mortgage amount plus your regular monthly living expenses, combining that together to see if it's actually feasible. Okay, so let's jump to that now. This is a example of the budget sheet that we had when we were doing the NACA program. And even still, we do a monthly budget. I do both digital. When we sit down, we do both digital and we do paper. Because I wanted to show you this live, I made a copy. As you can see, you can tell here that I have a monthly budget folder. So this is just a copy and an example. Remember that we were talking about a household that made about 60,000, and that number came from the NACA workbook. So if you're looking at this and you're like, oh, I know how much money they make. No, you have no idea. This is actually an example, okay? And all I did was take $5,000 and I split that in half, as you can see here. So let's say this is John, and I'm talking about a joint household. If it were just you, sis, you would just do yours, but I'm doing this based on a combined household, okay? So let's say there's John and then there's Sue. Okay, John brings home $2,500 for the month, but John gets paid bi-weekly, okay? So we'll take 2,500 and we'll divide that by 2. That means that he brings in $1,250 per every 2 weeks, okay? And this is how you could organize yourself to kind of figure that out. And let's say Sue gets paid monthly. So she would take this amount and they'll have to work together to figure out who's paying what and where the money's going. And this is based on the net pay. I'm just doing this as an example. Realistically, it would not be $5,000 because you would take out the taxes. So if it were $5,000 and we took out, let's say, 20% of that, that would be $4,000. If we went based on that website and we had 5,000 and it said take away 28.7%, as I mentioned earlier, then you would roughly be bringing in about 3,000. Let's actually do that. The net would be $3,565, okay? $3,565. When we start calculating this, you will realize that down at the bottom, I will do the net income versus your expenses, and we'll build towards how much we're able to save, what is our commitment for our payment shock, and then again, you still want to have money left over for your savings. We're talking about how much house can you really afford based on what you really bring home. And I'm talking about net income. Gross looks nice, but you want to work with real numbers. Okay, my husband and I believe in paying tithes and offering. So let's just say we have $2,500 and we're going to take away 10%, right? Well, we take 10% away and that's $250. Let's say we give $50 for an offering, that's going to be $300. So let's say $300 is what John pays and $300 is what Sue pays, and that's what they're giving, okay? And let's say the due date is that they do that every first of the month. This column where I said paid, where basically is where we would highlight, or I would type in who's paying it, and I would color coordinate this. But you don't have to. I'm just giving a suggestion. Okay. Again, we're gonna say, let's say the rent was $700. Realistically, we're already looking at a high amount right now. Let's say the utilities was $150, that you have a car payment. Let's say one of your cars was paid off and there's one person that's having a payment of $315. Let's say you have some debt. It could be this might be I don't know, a student loan, it could be a personal loan, it could have been furniture that you bought, whatever that debt is. Let's say it was $122 that you're paying a month. Let's say that your cell phone bill is $150. Somebody's college loan is $50 a month. Groceries for the month is $300, and we cooked when we were saving. We were cooking and not eating out. Let's say gas is $300 a month. You have a medical bill that's $50. Somebody has a credit card and the minimum is $25. You pay car insurance, and let's say you want to have some entertainment money. So you want to buy clothes for yourselves, you want to go catch a movie, whatever it is. So what we would do is calculate this column to figure out how much that is of our living expenses that is going out. And if my number comes out to be a negative, that means I need to reduce in some area. So here we go, starting at 300. So 300 plus 300, I knew that would be 600, but I'm just doing it for the people who may not do this monthly, plus 700 plus 150 plus $315.12 plus $122 plus 150 plus 50 plus 300 plus 300. My number is getting there. Do you see where I am? All right. All right. Plus the medical bill, which was 50, plus 25, plus $60 for insurance a month. Okay. The total, oh, and I forgot our entertainment. So $133 equals 29.55.12. So I'm going to write that number down. 29.55.12. All right. That is what we are looking at for this made up household. Okay. These are made up figures, friends. Now, I would take this number and we're going to do some math. Our net income, if you remember, was $35.65. Let's remember that. $35.65. So 35.65, right? And we're going to subtract that from the total expenses. It's $2,955.12. And all we're going to do is subtract to find out our number. So $3,565 take away $2,955.12 leaves you with $609.88. Now, if you're out spending this money eating fast food and you haven't created a budget, then you will start looking at your statements and you're like, man, that's some money that I could have been saving. Yeah. All right, so this is what we have. We have $609.88 that we could use towards saving. $609.88. Okay. Now I need to make sure that whatever I put down as a payment shock, that there, for example, right now there's only one car payment, right? But let's say we need to add another car payment. Do I want to put that as a factor? So realistically, let's say that, remember I told you that NACA wants you to have a cushion of about $200. We're going to take away $200. Okay, let's put $200 in our personal savings. This is money that's not being used towards NACA necessarily, because again, you want to have cushion there, right? Let's say then that what we are left with is $409.88. So let's say that every month our payment shock is $400. Without fail, we want to save $400 and put that in our savings account that is going to be geared towards NACA. Okay? Now, what does that mean? That means that my rent right now, that was $700, I would need to say $700 plus $400 equals $1,100. And $1,100 is about the amount that we quoted earlier, if you remember, when we did 31% of the gross or the net. I don't know if y'all remember that. So we're right on track. We're right on target. That means when I go to Realtor to look for a home, that my estimated amount that I do not want to go over is going to be no larger than $1,100. Remember when we went to this website and we did the estimate? That means when I calculate in, I'm talking about no down payment, and let's just do a round figure of, let's say 5%. That means that I do not want to have my mortgage to be over $1,100. Even if I'm not going through NACA, you need to add in that 20% and my number cannot be over $1,100. So budgets are important, and this is an example why it's important. As you can see, you have so much money that can be saved, and you need to know where your money is going just as a whole. You just need to know. All right. I hope that helped you, and that's how you figure out your payment shock. All right. That is all for today's table talk session. I know that that was a lot of information, but I'm explaining it the way that I wish someone would have explained it to us when we were going through it. And again, you are advocating for yourself. Figure out what your payment shock would be. How much do you need to save to get to where you want to be? If you're in the negative, meaning you're not having enough money, if you're only trying to purchase a house by yourself, then either you're going to have to eliminate your debt, meaning cut down on some things, your monthly bills, or you can get another job to increase your gross and net amount. So you have two things that you'll have to work on. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. Please don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. See you next time for our next Table Talk session. Bye.